It was one of those stormy nights you'd rather spend curled up in bed than anywhere else. But there I was, driving down that familiar winding road home. That night, after what felt like the longest nursing shift ever, all I wanted was to get home and crash into bed. The rain was relentless, pouring down like a million tiny hammers against my car. The road, usually so familiar, felt different in the storm. It was like I was driving it for the first time. All I could hear were the thick raindrops falling on my car and my wipers screeching, trying their best to clear my view. I've driven this road 100 times, but that night it was like driving through a different world. Everything was shadows and whispers in the rain. I kept telling myself, just a little longer, Sarah, you're almost home. But deep down, in that lonely stretch of road, I couldn't shake off a strange feeling. As I drove, the storm seemed to grow angrier, the rain beating harder against my car. Then, through the blurry veil of water, I saw a figure on the side of the road. It was a man, completely drenched from head to toe, thumb outstretched, hoping for a ride. I slowed down, my heart torn. It's not safe to pick up strangers. Leaving someone out in this storm, though, didn't feel right either. After a moment's hesitation, my hand reached for the door lock, and I pulled over. "Thanks for stopping," he said as he got in, his voice almost lost in the sound of the rain. He introduced himself as Mark. He looked harmless enough, but there was something about him that made me feel uneasy. His clothes were soaked, and he shivered from the cold. As we drove, Mark talked about the storm like it was an old friend of his. He made strange comments about how he knew the area well, and how storms can change things, or people. His words were like riddles, making little sense to me. His gratitude slowly turned into something more unsettling, a kind of eeriness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Then, out of nowhere, Mark asked me to stop the car. We were in the middle of the woods, far from any houses or lights. Just trees and the dark, wet road. "Here is good," he said, pointing to a spot that looked like any other part of the forest. I couldn't understand why he would want to get out here, in the middle of nowhere, especially in this storm. I stopped the car, my mind racing with questions. Mark thanked me and stepped out into the rain, disappearing quickly into the night. I sat there for a moment, trying to shake off the fear that clung to me like the cold. I told myself I did the right thing, helping someone in need. But as I drove away, leaving the spot where I left Mark, I couldn't help but feel that something was not right. Just when I thought my night couldn't get any worse, my car started making a strange noise, and then, all of a sudden, it just stopped. Nothing I did could get it to start again. There I was, alone in the dark, stormy woods, with my heart pounding so loud I could hear it. I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. I was stuck, and I knew it. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but something else caught my attention. There was a news article about people who had gone missing in these very woods. The most recent case was about someone who looked just like Mark. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Was it just a creepy coincidence, or was there something more to it? As I was trying to make sense of it all, I heard something outside. It sounded like footsteps crunching on the wet leaves. I was too scared to look. My imagination was running wild, thinking about who or what could be out there in the dark, just beyond the reach of my car's headlights. I knew I had to get out of there fast. Without wasting another second, I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The car lurched forward, but then, with a loud bang, it jerked to a stop. My tire popped. I went into full panic mode. I was sure the hitchhiker had something to do with it. He must have sabotaged my car when I wasn't looking. My mind raced with fear as I frantically checked that all the doors were locked. I was trapped in my car, in the middle of nowhere, with a possible maniac lurking outside. I squinted through the windows, straining my eyes to see any movement in the pitch-black night. Every shadow seemed like it could be him, every sound a potential threat. My breath fogged up the glass as I peered into the darkness, trying to locate where he might be hiding, waiting to attack. Then, to make matters even more terrifying, my car's lights started flickering, and then just went out. I felt like I had gone blind as everything suddenly went black. As my eyes adjusted, I could barely see my own hands in front of my face. The sounds outside seemed closer now, more real and more frightening. Just when I thought things couldn't get any scarier, I saw headlights in the distance. A vehicle was coming my way. At first, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it was someone who could help. But then, I remembered the news article. Maybe Mark was part of a bigger plan. My hope turned to fear. Who was in that car? What did they want? Were they coming to help me? Or was I in more danger than ever? My heart was racing, and I felt a cold sweat on my skin. I didn't know what was going to happen next, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. With my heart racing and my hands shaking, I knew I couldn't just sit there in the dark, scared and helpless. I had to do something. So I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and opened the car door. The rain was pouring down so hard it was like walking into a shower. I stepped out into the storm, determined to find a way out of this nightmare. As I stood there trying to figure out what to do next, I saw the mysterious vehicle that had been approaching. It had stopped not too far from me. My heart was in my throat as I watched the driver's door open. Who could it be? I braced myself for the worst. But then, out stepped a man in a raincoat holding a flashlight. It was the tow truck driver from the local garage. I remembered him from earlier when I filled up my car after my shift. He tried to get me to reconsider going on the road in this weather, but I assured him that I could handle it. I couldn't believe it was him. He explained that he was worried about me driving on such a stormy night. So he followed me at a distance, just in case I ran into any trouble. And there he was, right when I needed help the most. He calmly hooked my car to his truck and helped me onto the passenger's side of the truck before getting in himself. As we drove off, I couldn't help looking around, afraid that somehow Mark had climbed onto the truck or into my car to follow us. I only felt relief once we reached the town, and it was clear that we were safe. I thanked the tow truck driver over and over. I couldn't believe that he had gone out of his way to help me. I was so grateful for his kindness, and it made me see that even in scary situations, there are good people willing to help. As I drove in a taxi back to the hospital where I would spend the night, I thought about everything that had happened. I was safe now, but the night's events left a big impression on me. I realized how important it is to be careful, but also how kindness from strangers can make a huge difference in our lives. After that night, I knew I'd never forget the tow truck driver's unexpected but life-saving help. After a long shift at the restaurant, the night was finally winding down. My name's Jordan, 28 years old, a chef who's no stranger to the late hours of the city's bustling culinary scene. As I locked up the kitchen and said goodbye to the last of my co-workers, the silence of the empty streets outside was a welcome change from the clatter and chatter of pots, pans, and dinner service. The drive home was my time to decompress, the car's interior a small sanctuary where thoughts of the day could unravel and float away. The city at night felt like a different world, one where the day's urgency faded into the background, replaced by the tranquil glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of neon signs. This route, with its familiar turns and landmarks, had become a comforting routine, a path I could navigate with ease. But tonight, as I made my way through the quiet streets, a sense of anticipation lingered in the air, as if the night held a secret just waiting to be discovered. It was on a dimly lit street, one I'd traveled countless times before, that I spotted something out of place. There, in the soft glow of a distant streetlight, lay a scooter, its silhouette casting a long shadow on the pavement. And next to it, an unsettling shape that my brain struggled to make sense of. At first, I thought it might be a trick of the light, or perhaps some forgotten belongings. But as I drew closer, the reality of the situation became clear. It wasn't just a pile of clothes or a bag left behind. It was a person, motionless, in the shadow of the scooter. My heart skipped a beat and a cold rush of adrenaline surged through me. I couldn't just drive by. not without making sure they were okay. Pulling over, I reached for my phone with shaky hands, the weight of the situation settling in. Calling for help was the only thing that made sense, but as I dialed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this night was about to take a turn I was wholly unprepared for. As I stepped out of my car, the cool night air hit me, making me shiver slightly. The quiet of the night was now pierced by the sound of my own footsteps as I cautiously approached the figure next to the scooter. My phone was clutched tightly in one hand, ready to call for help, but part of me still hoped there was some explanation that didn't involve someone being hurt. The closer I got, the more details became clear. The scooter was on its side, as if it had been hastily abandoned. The person lying on the ground wasn't moving, and for a moment, I froze, unsure of what to do next. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice sounding loud in the silence. There was no response, just the faint sound of distant traffic. Swallowing my fear, I dialed 911, explaining the situation in a rush. "Please hurry," I urged, giving them my location. The dispatcher's calm voice was a small comfort, but waiting alone in the dark, with a stranger's fate hanging in the balance, felt like an eternity. I kept a safe distance, remembering all the advice I'd heard about not moving injured people. My eyes scanned the street, hoping to see the emergency lights any second. That's when I heard it. Voices, approaching fast. A group of people turned the corner, talking and laughing, unaware of the scene they were about to stumble upon. As they saw the scooter and their friend on the ground, their laughter died. Panic took its place, their voices rising in confusion and fear. They looked from their friend to me and back again, trying to piece together what had happened. I stepped forward, wanting to explain that help was on the way, but the sight of me seemed to ignite a spark of anger among them. "You did this," one of them accused, pointing at me. The shock of the accusation left me momentarily speechless. I had stopped to help, and now I was being blamed. "No, I just found him like this," I stammered, but my words seemed to evaporate in the cold night air. They didn't seem convinced, their faces twisted in a mix of grief and suspicion. I realized then that this situation could quickly get worse. I was alone, with a group of upset and possibly angry people, and the only thing I had to protect myself was my truth and my hope that the ambulance would arrive soon. My heart was racing, every beat echoing loudly in my ears as I faced the group's mounting anger. "I didn't do anything," I tried again, my voice stronger this time, but it was like speaking to a storm. Their accusations continued to fly, each word a dagger of blame and suspicion. The night air, once merely cool, now felt ice cold as fear took hold. I stepped back, creating space between us, my mind racing for a way to diffuse the tension. "Look, I called for help," I said, holding up my phone to show them the screen, the call to emergency services still connected. For a moment, there was a flicker of doubt in their eyes, a pause in their anger, but it was fleeting. "Why should we believe you?" one of them challenged, his stance aggressive. The situation was spiraling out of control, every second stretching out endlessly as I searched for the right words to convince them of my innocence. Just then, the distant sound of sirens began to pierce the night, growing louder with each passing moment. Relief washed over me, followed by a wave of anxiety about how the emergency responders would view the scene. Would they believe my story? The group turned towards the sound, their anger momentarily forgotten in the face of approaching help. As the flashing lights rounded the corner, casting blue and red shadows on the street, the group's hostility didn't vanish, but it lessened, overshadowed by the urgency of their friend's condition. Paramedics jumped out of the ambulance, quickly assessing the situation as police officers began to ask questions. I recounted everything from the moment I found the person by the scooter, emphasizing my immediate call for help. The officers listened, nodding, taking notes. The group, still tense, watched the paramedics work, their earlier aggression replaced by concern for their friend. The ambulance left with the injured person, and the police finished their questioning. I was free to go, the officers satisfied with my explanation. But as I walked back to my car, The weight of the night's events hung heavily on my shoulders. I had stopped to help, and for a moment, found myself in a nightmare of misunderstanding and fear. Driving home, the streets were silent again, but the quiet no longer offered comfort. I knew I'd done the right thing, but the fear and accusations had left a mark. I resolved to always be cautious, but reaffirmed my commitment to help when needed. The world can be unpredictable, and kindness is often met with suspicion, but I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions. Tonight was a stark reminder of the delicate thread that connects us all, the fine line between help and harm. I had just finished my cleaning job at the mall, a big building all by itself near the highway outside of town. My hands were still a bit wet and smelled like the cleaning stuff as I locked the mall's back door. I walked to my car in the almost empty parking lot. I threw my bag in the back seat, settled behind the wheel, and put on my safety belt. But then, my car wouldn't start. Great, I said to myself, trying the keys in the ignition, but the car just made a tired sound and didn't start. I looked at my watch. It was really late, way past when most buses stop running. But I remembered, there was one last bus, the late night route. I grabbed my bag and walked to the highway, where the small old bus stop was barely lit by a dim streetlight. The rain was getting worse and my socks were getting wet in my old shoes. I don't really like traveling alone at night, especially on a bus. But what choice did I have? I needed to get home, and even if I could get someone to come out here at this time of night, it would take forever. Standing under the bus shelter, with the rain dripping down, I tried to shake off the bad feeling in my stomach. It's just a bus ride, I said to myself, trying to sound brave. But it was so dark, the kind of dark that seems to hide everything, even the sound of the rain. I waited for the last bus, the seconds feeling like minutes. Finally, the bus came, creaking as it stopped in front of me. I climbed on, dripping wet. The bus driver didn't say anything, not even a hello. He just looked straight ahead like I wasn't there. I found it a bit weird, but I didn't say anything either. I just walked down the aisle and found a seat near the middle. As the bus started moving, I realized I was the only one on it. It was just me and the driver. The sound of the rain hitting the bus was loud and the windows were all foggy. I wiped one with my sleeve to look outside, but it was so dark I couldn't see much. Then, something strange happened. The bus turned onto a road I didn't know. I ride this bus a lot, and it never goes this way. I leaned forward, trying to see the street signs, but they were all blurry in the rain. My heart started to beat a little faster. Where was this bus going? I reached for my phone, thinking I could use it to see where we were, but when I pressed the power button, nothing happened. My phone was dead. I couldn't call anyone, couldn't check the map. I felt a knot in my stomach. That's when I heard a soft thumping noise coming from the back of the bus. Thump, thump, thump. Like someone or something was moving around. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing there, just empty seats and shadows. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just the bus making noises. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Every few minutes I would look back, but it was always the same. Nothing but empty seats. The bus kept driving, turning down more dark, empty streets. I felt more and more scared, sitting there all alone, not knowing where I was going. I wished I had never gotten on this bus. But now, all I could do was wait and hope it would take me somewhere safe. The bus ride felt like it was taking forever. The driver started acting really strange. He began mumbling to himself, words I couldn't understand. Then, he started driving really fast, taking sharp turns. I could feel my heart pounding. I held onto the seat in front of me, trying not to get thrown around. "Hey, can you slow down?" I shouted, but he didn't listen. He just kept mumbling and driving wild. I was really scared now. I tried to think of what to do, but my mind was all over the place. Then I noticed something on the seat in front of me. There were words scratched into it. I leaned closer to read them. "Don't look back," they said. My hands started to shake. Who wrote this? What did it mean? I couldn't help it. I looked back again, but still, there was nothing. Just then, I heard a whisper, right next to my ear. I jumped and turned my head fast, but no one was there. I felt cold all over, like someone was watching me, standing right next to me. But every time I looked, there was no one. Suddenly, the bus screeched to a stop. I looked out the window and saw we were in a forest, surrounded by trees. It was so dark, and the rain was pouring down harder than ever. I looked up at the driver, but he wasn't in his seat. He was gone. How did he leave without me noticing? I didn't know what to do. Stay on the bus or go look for help. I decided to step out, thinking maybe I could find a house or something. I immediately started to run as I got off the bus, but quickly realized it was a mistake. Sure, I may have gotten away from the driver, but out here the trees looked the same everywhere. I couldn't tell which way was back to the bus. Then, my foot caught on something. I fell hard on the ground. My hands landed on something soft and squishy. Heart pounding, I scrambled up and saw I had tripped over a large, torn-up backpack. It looked old and abandoned, like it had been there for a while. I wondered who it belonged to and what had happened to them. This made me even more scared. I wasn't just lost. I was in a place where something bad might have happened. I started running again, calling out for help, but my voice just got swallowed up by the rain and the trees. I heard noises all around me, like animals moving in the dark. I was really scared of getting lost even more, or something worse. It was cold and wet, and I was shivering. I wished I had stayed on the bus. I wished I had never gotten on it in the first place. But now, I was lost in the woods, in the middle of a storm, with no idea how to get out. I kept running, not knowing where I was going, my clothes all wet and my teeth chattering from the cold. I just wanted to find a way out, to see lights and people again, to feel safe. But the more I ran, the deeper into the dark, scary forest I seemed to go. But then, finally, I saw a light through the trees. I sprinted towards it, hoping it was something good. It was a small diner, right by the roadside. I couldn't believe it. I ran to the door and went inside. It was warm and bright, and a few people looked up as I came in, looking all wet and scared. I went straight to the phone on the counter and called the police. I told them everything. The weird bus ride, the driver who disappeared, the creepy messages, and getting lost in the woods. They said they would come right away. When the police got there, I told them my story again. They listened and wrote things down. They went to look for the bus and the driver, but they came back and said they couldn't find anything. No bus, no driver, nothing. It was like they had just vanished. I was safe in the diner, but I felt really weird. I had so many questions. What happened on that bus? Who wrote those messages? Where did the driver go? But there were no answers. The police said maybe it was my imagination because I was scared, but I knew what I saw and heard. After that night, I promised myself I would never travel alone at night again. Even now, when I think about it, I get a weird feeling. I don't know if I'll ever understand what really happened. Was it all real, or was it just my fear making me see and hear things? I guess I'll never know. But one thing's for sure, I'll always remember that scary night on the bus. I'm Sarah, a 30-year-old nurse who's just wrapped up another night shift. You know, one of those shifts that feels like it's never going to end. I love my job, really, I do. Helping people is my calling, but tonight, I'm just wiped. All I want is to kick off my shoes, crawl into bed, and forget about the world for a few hours. As I walk through the hospital's parking lot, pulling my jacket tighter around me, I can't help but notice how empty it feels. It's eerie, with the streetlights flickering on and off. I always feel there's going to be a weirdo around the corner. That's when I spot him, a guy standing next to a car, looking all sorts of frustrated as he fumbles with the lock. He's got this vibe that sets off alarm bells in my head. Something about him just doesn't sit right with me. He catches sight of me and calls out, "Hey, can you help me? My car won't open." His voice sends a shiver down my spine. I remember what my mom always told me, trust your gut. And right now my gut is screaming at me to keep walking. Sorry, I can't help, I say, quickening my pace. I don't look back, even though I can feel his eyes on me. Once I'm safely in my car, I lock the doors immediately, take a deep breath, and try to shake off the unease. But as I drive away, I can't escape the feeling that tonight, the darkness is heavier than usual. And little did I know, my night was about to get even more complicated. I'm on the road, trying to focus on the drive home. The streets are quieter than usual, it's just me and the road, or so I think. But then, I catch a glimpse of something in my rearview mirror. A pair of headlights, far back but definitely there. At first, I tell myself it's just another late-night driver. But as I turn left, the car behind me does the same. When I turn right, it mirrors my actions. My heart starts to beat faster. This can't be a coincidence. I try to calm myself down. Maybe they're just going the same way, I whisper, trying to believe it. But with every turn I take, the car stays with me, like a shadow. My mind races back to the man in the parking lot. Could it be him? No, that's crazy. But the thought sticks, and I can't shake it off. I decide to test my theory. I make a sudden turn without signaling, then another quick turn. The car follows each time. Panic sets in. This is no coincidence. I'm being followed. What does this person want from me? My imagination goes wild with scary possibilities. I know I can't lead this person to my house. I have to lose them, or at least find help. My eyes scan the road, searching for any place that might be open. A gas station, a convenience store, anything. But the roads seem deserted, making me feel even more alone. Then, I remember a 24-hour convenience store a few miles ahead. If I can make it there, maybe I can get help. Or at the very least, there will be witnesses around. I grip the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white, and press on the gas. The store is my best shot at safety, and I need to get there fast. The car behind me keeps pace, but I don't let it scare me off course. I keep my eyes on the road, focusing on getting to that convenience store. Just a few more minutes, I tell myself, hoping and praying that I make it there safe. Finally, the bright lights of the convenience store come into view. My heart is pounding as I pull into the parking lot, the following car still on my tail. I park near the front, under the brightest light I can find. I glance in the rearview mirror and see the other car pulling in a few spots away. My breath catches in my throat. This is it, I think. I have to be brave. I don't wait. I grab my phone, ready to dial for help if I need to, and jump out of the car, making a beeline for the store's entrance. I'm hoping the person following me will back off if there are witnesses. But when I look back, I see him getting out of his car too. He's not the scary guy from the parking lot though. This person looks normal, worried even. But I've learned tonight that appearances can be deceiving. As I reach the door, I turn to face him, ready to scream for help if he tries anything. "Why are you following me?" I demand, trying to sound braver than I feel. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you," he says, holding his hands up as if to show he means no harm. "I saw someone messing with your car back at the hospital. I wanted to make sure you got home safe." I'm stunned. This wasn't what I expected. "Messing with my car? What do you mean?" He explains how he saw a figure lurking around my car, doing something near the tires. He couldn't see clearly, but it worried him enough to follow me just in case. He kept his distance to avoid scaring me, but obviously that plan didn't work out too well. My fear slowly starts to turn into relief, mixed with a bit of embarrassment. I thought you were trying to harm me," I admit, feeling my cheeks warm up. "I understand. I would have been scared too in your place," he says, "but I couldn't just leave without making sure you were okay." We go inside the store together, and I call the police. They arrive quickly and go back with me to check on my car. Sure enough, they find that someone had tampered with the tires, but thanks to this stranger's vigilance, a potentially dangerous situation was avoided. As the police handle the situation, I thank the man who followed me. "I'm sorry I misjudged you," I say. "No worries. I'm just glad you're safe," he replies with a smile. Driving home after that, I reflect on the night's events. It was a roller coaster of fear, suspicion, and ultimately, gratitude. I learned that sometimes, help comes in unexpected forms, and not everyone is out to get you. But most importantly, I learned to never ignore my gut feeling. It's what kept me safe in the end. Driving home late at night, everything was quiet except for my car moving down the street. My name's Alex, I'm 30, and I love taking pictures of everything interesting I see. That night, I had all my camera gear with me in the back seat, feeling happy about the photos I took. Usually I enjoy these quiet drives. They give me time to think about my pictures. But that night wasn't like the others. As I got closer to my apartment, I saw a group of guys hanging around the parking lot. This wasn't totally new. I've seen people around before, even at night, and I guess they've seen me too, coming back from my late-night photo sessions. Maybe they noticed before how I always have my camera and stuff with me. Seeing them there made me feel a bit uneasy. It's not like they were doing anything scary, but you know, it's late. And here they are, just standing around. And with them possibly knowing I carry expensive gear, I couldn't help but feel a bit worried. I tried to shake off the worry, telling myself it was nothing. They were probably just hanging out. But I couldn't ignore the feeling in my stomach that something was off tonight. As I pulled into the parking lot, my usual spot was taken, so I ended up parking a bit closer to where the group of guys was standing. I turned off my car and sat there for a moment, watching them from a distance. They were laughing and talking loudly, not really doing anything wrong, but I still felt that weird feeling in my gut. Before I got out of the car, I made sure my camera gear was hidden under a jacket in the back seat. I remembered now how I'd seen some of these guys around before. They might have noticed me coming back late other nights with my camera bag. Maybe they were just curious, but I didn't want to take any chances. I grabbed my keys and phone, thinking I'd just head straight to my apartment building and avoid any trouble. As I stepped out of the car, I tried to act cool, like I hadn't noticed them. But it was hard to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. Just as I locked my car and started walking away, I heard one of them shout, "Hey, isn't that the photographer guy?" My heart skipped a beat. I kept walking, pretending I didn't hear them, but then I heard footsteps. They were following me. I quickened my pace, hoping to make it to the building's entrance before they caught up. "Hey man, wait up. We just want to talk," one of them called out. But something in his tone didn't sound friendly. It sounded like trouble. Now, I was really starting to get scared. I wasn't just worried about my camera gear anymore. I was worried about what these guys might do. I remembered my mom always telling me, if you ever feel in danger, run. So that's what I did. I ran as fast as I could, hearing their footsteps getting louder behind me. As I ran, my breath came out in sharp puffs, and my legs felt like jelly. I could hear them laughing and shouting behind me, "Come on, we're just messing with you." But I wasn't about to stop and find out if that was true. The entrance to my building seemed miles away, and I wished I'd paid more attention in gym class when we had to run laps. Suddenly, one of them was too close for comfort. I could hear his footsteps right behind me, and panic surged through my body. In a desperate move, I veered off the path and ducked behind a parked car. My heart was hammering in my chest as I squeezed myself into the smallest ball possible, trying not to make a sound. For a moment, everything was silent except for my heavy breathing. Then I heard their footsteps slow down, wandering back and forth as they searched for me. "Where'd he go?" one of them asked, sounding more annoyed than curious now. "Forget it, man. He's gone," another voice replied, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But I didn't move, not yet. I waited, counting to 100 in my head, trying to calm down. When I finally peeked out, the parking lot was empty. They had given up and left. I crawled out from under the car, my clothes dirty and my hands shaking. I didn't care about looking cool or calm now. I just wanted to be safe inside my apartment. I sprinted the last few yards to the entrance, punching in the security code with trembling fingers. Once inside, I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath and let the reality of what had just happened sink in. I was safe, but the fear and adrenaline rush were slow to fade. The next day, I made a report to the building's security, describing the group of guys and what had happened. They promised to keep an eye out, and I promised myself to be more careful in the future. I knew I'd continue my night photography, but maybe I'd stick to well-lit areas for a while. I work at this old diner on the edge of town. It's the kind of place where truckers would stop for a quick bite and a strong cup of coffee to keep them awake for miles ahead. It is a bit of a relic, but it's got its charm, especially for a loner like me. On this particular night, it really was just me and the sound of the pouring rain pounding against the windows. The clock ticked past midnight and the diner was empty, save for the hum of the old radio I kept behind the counter. It played those classic hits that seemed to blend into the background, perfect for nights like this. I busied myself with the usual routine, wiping down tables, restocking condiments, and ever so often, peering out the rain-streaked windows into the parking lot. Not that I expected many customers on a night like this. Thinking about brewing another pot of coffee just to keep busy, I heard it, the gravel crunching in the parking lot. A car pulling up? I wiped my hands on my apron and moved towards the window, expecting to see a customer braving the storm for a late-night snack. But as I looked out, all I saw was an old, beat-up car parked at an odd angle, its headlights off and windows fogged up. I waited for a moment, expecting the door to open and a drenched customer to rush in, seeking refuge and maybe a hot cup of coffee. But the car just sat there, silent and still. Probably just someone changing their mind about braving the rain. I muttered to myself, turning back to my chores. It wasn't the first time a driver had second thoughts about stopping at a lonely diner in the middle of a stormy night. After a while, I looked out the window to see if the car was still there. As I stood there, squinting through the rain, my eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness outside. The diner's neon sign, flickering in the storm, cast a dim, eerie glow on the parking lot. That's when I noticed it, a dark figure moving just beyond the reach of the light. It was hard to make out details, but it looked like someone was out there pacing back and forth, and the car seemed to be gone. This wasn't normal. In all my years working here, I'd never seen anything quite like this. My first thought was to go out and check. Maybe someone needed help, but something about the situation felt off. The figure seemed to be deliberately staying in the shadows, almost as if they were trying to avoid being seen. I decided to play it safe. Locking the front door, I watched from behind the counter, keeping my eyes fixed on the mysterious figure. Minutes passed, but they didn't attempt to come in or move towards the light, just pacing, back and forth, like a caged animal. Then suddenly the figure stopped. They stood still for a moment and I held my breath, waiting for their next move. But instead of coming towards the diner, they turned and disappeared into the rain and darkness. I let out a sigh, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. Probably just a lost traveler or a local out for a strange walk, I told myself, though the thought did little to comfort me. I went back to my chores, trying to focus on the familiar routine of the diner. But the image of the dark figure lingered in my mind, unsettling me more than I cared to admit. As the night wore on, the storm intensified, and the diner felt more isolated than ever. I tried to lose myself in the mundane tasks, but realized I was now aware of every creak and groan of the old building. It was going to be a long night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was far from over. Suddenly, there was a knock at the back door. Sharp and urgent. It caught me so off guard. I jumped. Cautiously, I approached the door, peering through the small window. But there was nobody there, just the relentless rain and darkness. As I turned away, confused and on edge, a loud crash echoed through the diner. It sounded like breaking glass. My pulse raced. This was no ordinary night. Someone, or something, was out there. I needed to protect myself. I scrambled through the kitchen, my hands shaking as I searched for anything I could use as a weapon. My fingers closed around a heavy frying pan. Not ideal, but it would have to do. Heart pounding, I crept towards the source of the noise, the diner now feeling like a maze of shadows and uncertainty. The sound of my own breathing seemed deafening in the silence that followed the crash. As I rounded the corner, I saw it. A broken window, shards of glass scattered on the floor, rain pouring in. I barely had time to process this when I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the front of the diner. Someone was inside. Panic surged through me. I needed a hiding place. Fast. I ducked into the storage closet, squeezing behind stacks of supplies, gripping the frying pan tightly. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I held my breath, praying not to be found. The closet door creaked open, and I could see a shadow looming in the doorway. My heart was in my throat. The intruder stepped closer, and I knew I had to act. Gathering all my courage, I jumped out from behind the boxes and yelled, swinging the frying pan as hard as I could. But the intruder moved fast. He dodged my swing and grabbed my arm tightly. The frying pan fell to the floor with a loud noise, and I was left with no weapon. We fought hard, pushing and pulling each other. He was really strong, but I was fighting to protect myself. We bumped into shelves and boxes and stuff fell all around us. Every time I tried to get away, he held on tighter, trying to hold me down. I hit him a few times, trying to make him let go, but he didn't seem to care. He pushed back harder, breathing heavily. We moved around the small room, knocking over more things. We were both trying to get the upper hand in the fight. It was during one frantic moment, as we grappled and twisted, that I felt a sharp blow to the side of my head. A searing pain shot through me. My vision blurred, and a ringing filled my ears. The last thing I remember was the intruder standing over me, and then everything went black. I woke up on the cold floor, my head pounding like nothing I'd ever felt before. For a moment I was disoriented, trying to piece together what had happened. As my vision cleared, I noticed the mess around me. Shelves toppled over, supplies scattered everywhere. Then it hit me. The struggle, the intruder, the blow to my head. I slowly got to my feet, my head throbbing with every movement. That's when I saw the extent of the damage. The TV behind the counter was gone, and the cash registers were open and empty. Panic set in as I realized we'd been robbed. Stumbling to the front, I found the door wide open, banging back and forth in the fierce wind and rain. Outside, in the dim light of dawn, I could see tire marks on the wet ground, signs of a car speeding away. It all made sense now. The intruder, the attack. It was all a setup for a robbery. I reached for the phone with shaky hands and called the cops. They arrived as the storm was letting up, their lights cutting through the morning mist. I explained everything, still trying to wrap my head around the night's events. The officers checked the diner's security cameras. The footage showed it all, the intruder who fought me, and his accomplice who sneaked in with a gun. They worked quickly, grabbing whatever they could before making their escape. As I watched the footage, a chilling realization washed over me. I was incredibly lucky to have been knocked out when I was. If I had stayed conscious, if I had tried to fight back or stop them, things could have ended much worse for me. The thought was terrifying. It was just before midnight when I entered the warehouse. My name is Mark Thompson, and I'm 30 years old. I work here at night as a security guard with my dog, Rex. This warehouse is on the edge of a small town. It's big and old, and it's not very bright inside, so there are long, creepy shadows everywhere. But Rex and I aren't scared of that. I work at night because it pays more, and I need the money for my family. We settled into the small security office, getting ready for another night. My job is to watch the security cameras, do some paperwork, and make sure everything is safe until morning. It's usually just me and Rex, and we like it that way. It's quiet, and I can think about what I want to do in the future. But I didn't know that tonight was going to be different from all the other nights. I started my work routine like I always do. First, I checked the security cameras. I do this every hour to make sure everything's okay in the warehouse. The cameras show me all the different places inside, so I don't have to walk around the whole building all the time. After checking the cameras, Rex and I walked around the warehouse. I made sure all the doors and gates were locked tight. Rex is good at listening for strange noises. If he hears something odd, like a bang or creak, I would stop and listen carefully. Most of the time, it was just the building making noise, but I always checked to be sure. Rex was brave and always ready to help, which made me feel brave too. It was when we got back to the security station that I noticed it for the first time. While I was looking at the security camera screens, I saw something weird. There was a blurry shape that popped up on one of the screens and then vanished. I squinted, trying really hard to figure out what it was. Could it be just the lights playing tricks, or was it something else? I kept switching between the different camera views, really focusing. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't understand what that strange shape was. It made me feel more and more worried. Just when I was trying to figure out this confusing video, Rex suddenly perked up his ears. He ran out of the office barking super loud. It caught me off guard, and I quickly grabbed my flashlight to follow him into the dark warehouse. I followed the sound of his barking through the aisles, but suddenly, the barking just stopped. I called out, "Rex! Rex!" but he didn't answer. My voice just echoed around the big empty warehouse. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find Rex at all. Feeling really worried and confused, I ran back to the security office. I hoped I could find Rex on the camera screens. But when I looked at them carefully, I realized something strange. The videos weren't live. They were old videos of the warehouse. Someone had messed with the security cameras. I felt a cold chill. Not only could I not find Rex, but I also knew that the security system, which I thought was protecting us, wasn't working right. Why would someone change the camera footage? And how? It seemed like someone was playing a trick on me, but I didn't know why. I felt a little relieved that there wasn't really a weird shape in the warehouse, but also more scared. Someone had done a lot of work to make this happen, and I didn't know who or why. Then, things got even stranger. I heard a truck engine outside the warehouse. That wasn't supposed to happen. There were no deliveries or pickups at this time. I felt my heart race, thinking this could be something big. I moved quietly towards the noise. When I looked around a corner, I saw two people putting boxes into a truck. They were stealing stuff. I couldn't believe it. While I was busy with the strange camera footage, these thieves were here, robbing the place. Then I realized the thieves must have messed with the cameras to keep me busy. They planned this, using the fake footage to trick me while they stole things. What if they did something to Rex? I felt mad and scared. I had been fooled, and now I needed to act. I knew I had to stop them. It was risky, but I couldn't let them just take things. I stepped back to the desk and pressed the panic button. I was sure I was going to need backup. I took a deep breath and came out of hiding, yelling, "Hey!" The thieves were shocked. They stopped and looked at me. One of them had something in his hand, maybe a crowbar. I knew I was in big trouble. The one with the crowbar stepped closer, and I could see he meant business. He said in a harsh voice, "Don't try anything or you'll be sorry." I could tell he wasn't joking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. They moved quickly, grabbing me. I tried to get away, but they were too strong. They dragged me outside and threw me into the big recycling bin. It was dark and smelly, and they slammed the lid shut. I heard them lock it from the outside. I was trapped, and it was really scary. I could barely move or see anything. I felt really helpless and worried about what would happen next. Just then, I heard the subtle cry. It was Rex. "Rex, buddy, you're okay!" I yelled as I heard the sound of the truck driving away. The thieves were getting away with everything, and I couldn't do anything about it. I tried to call for help, but nobody could hear me. It felt like we were in there forever, but it must have been only half an hour or so before the police arrived. I heard voices outside and the sound of the bin being opened. The fresh air felt so good. The police helped me and Rex out. They looked around, but the thieves were long gone. My boss showed up and he was both upset about the robbery and relieved that I was okay. He said it could have been much worse. I felt a rush of different emotions. I was shaking a bit, trying to take deep breaths to calm down. My boss and I both looked around the warehouse while the police gave Rex some water and something to eat. It was a mess, and a lot of stuff was gone. My boss was upset about the theft, his hands on his head, looking at all the empty spaces where things used to be. He kept saying things like, "How could this happen?" and "What are we going to do now?" I felt really bad too. I thought maybe I could have done something more to stop the thieves. But then, my boss turned to me and said, "You know, stuff can be replaced, but you can't. I'm just glad you're safe." That made me feel a little better. He was right. It was just things that were stolen, but I was still here, and that was what mattered most. We talked to the police for a while, telling them everything that happened. After the police left, my boss and I sat down. We were both quiet for a bit. Then we started talking about what we could learn from this. My boss said we needed better security, like more cameras or an alarm system. I agreed. I said maybe we could also have more than one person on duty at night. The whole experience was really scary, but it taught me a lot. I learned that it's important to be careful and to not take risks when you're in danger. My boss learned that we needed to make the warehouse safer. We both felt a mix of being sad about the robbery and thankful that nobody was hurt. It was a night we wouldn't forget. It showed us that even when bad things happen, you can learn from them and make things better for next time. Hi there, I'm Alex. I guess you could call me a night owl. Working late at the office is kind of my thing. By day, I'm just another data analyst at a big tech company, crunching numbers, attending meetings, you know, the usual. But at night, when everyone else is gone, that's when my real work begins. I'm saving every penny for my dream, my own tech startup. The office at night is a whole different world. It's just me, my computer, and the quiet hum of the servers. I love the peace, the way I can hear my own thoughts without the hustle and bustle of the daytime crowd. Sometimes I even prefer it to my tiny cluttered apartment. But, let's be honest, it can get a bit eerie. You know, dark corners, the odd creak of an empty chair, the occasional flicker of a light, it's all part of the late-night charm. But this particular night, something was different. It wasn't just the usual quiet. It felt heavier, like there was something in the air. I tried to brush it off, keep my eyes on my screens, focus on my work. I'm used to the little sounds of the building at night, but then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A scream, distant, muffled, but unmistakable. So there I was, alone, in this big, silent office with a decision to make. Do I go check it out? Do I just pack up and head home, pretend like I didn't hear anything? I had no idea that the choice I was about to make would change everything. I sat there for a minute, my mind racing. It's probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe it was the wind. Buildings like this, they make all sorts of sounds at night. But then, another noise. This time, it wasn't a scream. It was different, like something moving around upstairs. I tried to focus, tried to make sense of it. It sounded like someone or something was up there. I knew I had a choice to make. Be smart, stay safe, just keep working and forget about it. Or, go see what it was. I'm not usually the adventurous type, you know, but something inside me just couldn't let it go. What if someone needed help? What if it was serious? I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. So, I made up my mind. I'd take a quick look, just to put my mind at ease. I stood up, my chair squeaking loudly in the silent office. It sounded like the loudest noise in the world at that moment. I grabbed my phone, just in case I needed to call for help, and headed towards the stairwell. The office felt different as I walked through it. The corridors seemed narrower, every sound was amplified, my footsteps on the carpet, the soft hum of the computers, my own breathing. It was like the office was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. I reached the stairwell, flicked on the light, and started up the stairs. The light was creepy, casting long shadows on the steps. My footsteps echoed in the empty stairwell, each step sounding louder and louder. It was kind of spooky, you know, the kind of feeling you get when you're not sure if you're alone or not. As I got closer to the upper floor, the noises became clearer. It definitely sounded like someone was moving around. Not just random sounds, but purposeful, like footsteps, maybe some shuffling. My heart was pounding in my chest. I was scared, sure, but also curious. What was going on up there? As I reached the top of the stairs, my heart was beating so loud I thought it might burst. I peeked around the corner, and that's when I saw it. There was a guy, a burglar, loading computers and stuff onto a cart. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was real. This was actually happening. Then I noticed something even more shocking. In the break room, there was a woman, tied up, looking scared and helpless. My mind was racing. What do I do? I've never been in a situation like this. I'm just a data analyst, not some action hero. I knew I had to do something. I crept back down the stairs, my hands shaking. I needed to call for help. I pulled out my phone, but in my panic, I fumbled and dropped it. It clattered down the stairwell. Gone. My heart sank. Now what? I raced back to my desk, trying to be as quiet as I could. I picked up the desk phone and dialed 911, whispering into the receiver about the burglar and the woman upstairs. Then I called down to the security desk, telling the guard there was trouble on the 11th floor. But I couldn't just wait there. I had to go back up. The woman needed help. I tiptoed back up the stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. I reached the break room and saw her there, tied to a chair. I signed for her to be quiet. She looked so scared. I whispered to her that I was going to help, that I had called the police. I started to untie her, my fingers clumsy with nerves. We were almost free when it happened. We knocked over a mug on the table. It crashed to the floor, shattering. The noise seemed deafening. I froze. The burglar, he heard it. I could hear him stop what he was doing. He was coming to check. My mind was a blur of fear and panic. We were in real danger now. The burglar was coming, and the police weren't here yet. What were we going to do? Our hearts pounding like crazy. We were super scared. We could hear these guys walking around searching for us. We could hear them opening doors and moving desks and so on. We were so scared we couldn't move. It felt like it lasted an hour. But then, something amazing happened. We heard police sirens in the distance. I never thought I'd be so happy to hear those sounds. The burglar heard them too. I sneaked a peek and saw him panicking. He realized he was about to get caught. Quickly, he grabbed some of the stuff he was trying to steal and ran towards the emergency stairs. The woman and I were still in the break room, not sure if it was safe to come out yet. We could hear his footsteps thundering down the stairs, and then the sound of the police entering the building. They sounded strong and in control. I helped the woman to her feet. She was still shaking, but she was okay. We cautiously stepped into the hallway, just as the police were making their way up. They told us to stay put. Seeing them was such a relief. The police took over from there. They asked us a few questions to make sure we were okay. Downstairs, we could hear more officers arriving and lots of commotion. They were chasing after the burglar. Eventually, they escorted us downstairs, away from all the chaos. The office felt safer now, the fear was gone, but my heart was still doing somersaults. It was so hard to believe. I came to the office for a normal night of work, and ended up in the middle of a real-life crime story. Wow, what a night. As I sat there, outside the office building, the sun was starting to come up. It was so quiet, just like when I first came into work. But everything felt different now. I was different. I kept thinking about what had just happened. I mean, I'm just Alex, the guy who likes numbers and dreams about starting his own company. I never thought I'd be in the middle of something like this. It was scary, sure. But you know what? I was brave. I helped someone. That felt really good. The police, they were awesome. They caught the burglar, and the woman was safe. The officer said I did a good thing being brave and calling them. I guess sometimes you have to face scary things. You can't just run away or pretend it's not happening. Sitting there, watching the sky get brighter, I realized something. Life's not just about work and making money. It's about moments like these, where you find out what you're really made of. I learned I could be brave, even when I was scared. That's something I'll never forget. So, yeah, this was just another night at the office, but it turned into a night I'll always remember. It taught me a lot about myself. And you know what? I think I'm ready for whatever comes next. My name's Jason. I'm 29, and life hasn't been too kind lately. I used to have a regular day job, but I lost it. Now I work nights at this highway toll booth they call Milestone 13. It's way out here, far from the city lights, surrounded by thick woods that look almost like a dark ocean at night. I took this job to help my mom. She's sick and needs a lot of care, and the bills, well, they just don't stop coming. I'm not much of a talker, and I guess that's why I don't mind the quiet of the night shift. There's something about the stillness and the routine of it all that makes me feel a bit more at ease, even if it's just for a while. Milestone 13 isn't like your regular toll booth. During the day, it's just a normal spot on the highway, but at night, it's different. The booth itself is brightly lit, like a little island in a sea of darkness. But the parking lot and everything else around, pitch black. Sometimes when I look out into those woods, I can barely see where the trees start. It's like staring into nothing, and it can give you the creeps if you think about it too long. But I just keep telling myself it's just another night, just another shift. Just me, the booth, and the occasional car passing through. Little did I know, one of these nights would turn out to be anything but ordinary. So there I was, starting another night at Milestone 13. The first thing that felt off was when I was walking through the underpass to get to my booth. I couldn't shake this feeling that someone was watching me. I kept looking over my shoulder, but there was nobody there. It was just me and the echo of my footsteps. It sent a chill down my spine, but I tried to brush it off as just my imagination. Things didn't get any better when the customers started coming through. There was this one guy in a beat-up car. He drove up, didn't look at me, and just mumbled something I couldn't hear. He seemed like he wanted to get out of there fast. Then, not long after, this lady came through. She kept glancing in her rearview mirror, looking all nervous like she was being followed. It was strange, seeing people act like that. But what really got me was when I saw something in the backseat of a car. It was just for a second, but I swear I saw a shadowy figure. When I blinked and looked again, nothing was there. It made my heart race a bit. I told myself I was seeing things because it was late and I was tired. And the woods around the booth didn't help either. I started hearing these weird noises, like scratching sounds and soft whispers. They were coming from the trees. I tried to tell myself it was just animals, or maybe the wind. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Then there was the phone. It started ringing at random times. Every time I picked it up, ready to speak, there was nothing but silence on the other end. It happened over and over. It would ring, I would answer, and then nothing. It was like someone was playing a game with me. All of this together, it just made the night feel heavier, like something wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen, something bad. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any weirder, it did. Out of nowhere, this huge stone came flying at the booth's glass. Bang! It made such a loud noise that I jumped out of my skin. But thank goodness the glass was bulletproof, so I was safe, at least for that moment. My heart was racing like crazy. Then, I saw them. A bunch of kids, but not just any kids. They were wearing masks and looked really scary. They came out of the woods, holding things like bats and sticks. It hit me right then. They were after the cash in the booth. I couldn't believe this was happening. These masked kids started banging on the glass, trying to break in. The noise was deafening. I felt trapped like a sitting duck. There I was, in this little booth with nowhere to run, no way to protect myself. Every bang on the glass made my heart pound harder. I didn't know what to do. I never thought something like this would happen at milestone 13, but it was happening, and I had to figure out fast how to stay safe. The situation was getting scarier by the minute. After trying to smash the glass, one of the masked kids found a can of something. It looked like paint, and they started spraying it all over the booth's windows. In just seconds, the clear glass turned into a foggy mess. I couldn't see anything outside anymore, which made me feel even more trapped and helpless. My booth, once a place I felt safe in, now felt like a cage. Then, the worst thing happened. They started trying to set fire to the booth. I saw flickers of light through the smeared paint. They were using lighters, trying to light up anything they could find. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was thinking, this is it. I'm in serious trouble. The thought of being trapped in a burning booth was terrifying. I tried to keep calm, but it was hard. I needed help, and fast, but I didn't know how it would come. Just when I was thinking it was the end for me, something amazing happened. Remember the guy with the beat-up car? He was one of the customers who passed through my booth earlier that night. He had seen those masked youths hiding in the bushes and felt something wasn't right. So he decided to stick around, parking his car a little ways off, keeping an eye on things. Suddenly, there he was, in his car, honking the horn like crazy and flashing his headlights. It was like a scene from a movie. The kids, startled by the noise and the lights, stopped what they were doing. I could see their shadows moving around, confused and scared. But he didn't stop there. He had already called the highway patrol. And soon enough, I heard the sound that I never thought would be so sweet. The sirens of the approaching patrol cars. The sound got louder and louder, and as it did, the youth started to run away, disappearing into the woods. I was left there, in my booth, still shaking from all that had happened. The officers arrived, and I was safe, finally. The guy in the car came over to check if I was okay. I couldn't thank him enough. He was like a guardian angel or something. If it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened to me. I was scared, yeah, but I was safe, and that's what mattered most. After everything calmed down, the highway patrol drove me to the police station where they started asking me a bunch of questions. I told them all that had happened, still trying to get my head around it. I was feeling a lot of things, scared, shocked, but most of all, thankful. Thankful for the customer and his quick thinking. It made me realize just how vulnerable I was out there in my little booth at night. But at the same time, it showed me how people can be so brave and kind. It's funny in a way. I always liked the night for its quiet and calm. But that night I saw a different side of it. Its dangers and surprises. But you know what? It also showed me something else. How regular folks can be heroes and save the day. So, what did I do after all that? I kept working the night shift. Yeah, you heard that right. I didn't let that scary night stop me. It made me more careful, sure, but it also made me braver. I found strength in myself that I didn't know I had, and I started to see the world a bit differently, knowing there's always a chance for kindness and courage to show up, even in the most unexpected places and people. So, I kept on working at milestone 13, night after night, ready for whatever came next.